This meeting is being recorded.
Thanks, Thulsi. So Thulsi, working for IBM in Bengaluru. I have less trouble saying Bangalore, but so working for IBM so far for about 20 years. And he's going to be talking to us about using Jenkins and Kubernetes. So that's quite an interesting subject. Thank you, Thulsi. Let you take it away.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Peter, as well for this opportunity. And then I believe we have quite a number of audiences from IT Guild, and I believe that you are focused on the latest technologies, and which also prompted me to get onto this particular bandwagon and being interested in delivering this practitioner level exchange. That was my main idea there. So I find that the audience is quite mixed in nature, a combination of having deep expertise in different areas, but not necessarily Jenkins. And you have my folks which are known here. I can see Ram, and I can also see Mehul on the audience as well. So it's a deep mixture though, and I would like to start my presentation. Right. I hope you can all see my screen though. Okay. Let me start with the very first slide here. Okay.
Actually, I don't see your screen. Is that just me?
Oh, okay,
No?
okay. I'm going to share the screen and. Can you see the screen now?
Looks like it's coming. It's black for the moment, but oh, there you go. Yeah. Perfect.
Thank you. Okay, folks, thank you for waiting, and then we are getting started here. So the topic for presentation here as a practitioner exchange is how to use Jenkins to deploy workloads on Kubernetes. Let me start with this first slide. And for the Dutch audience, Baruch Spinoza is not new. So he mentions that the highest activity a human being can attain is learning for understanding, because to understand is to be free. Baruch Spinoza. So we are going to learn here, and then we are trying to be free. So that is the activity which we are going to do now. We are going to own, and then in the past hour and a half or so. Okay, and I hope to keep you engaged and provide you as an practitioner so that you get benefit out of getting with hands-on with pipelines on AWS environment. Okay, this is the first diagram which I have created, and it shows you in a high-level way. So basically, what we are going to do, I'm interested in pipelines, and I don't know how do I get started. And especially with the cloud world, it becomes a little bit complicated with a lot of service providers. We have AWS, Azure, and Google, right? And it gets complicated with the variety of scriptings and with the various services that are available in a cloud provider. So to make all the things clear, we are laid down our infrastructure diagram here. So on the left-hand side, we have our EC2 instance, which is going to connect with an EKS cluster here. So we are fixing with certain assumptions over here. One is that we are going to use manage Kubernetes service, and then we are going to use from EKS from AWS. Okay, and I have given the name of the cluster as Raghavendra. Okay, he's also one of the spiritual philosophical saints from India. And over here on the left-hand side, I have my EC2 instance, right? So it's a cloud instance, right? It's an on-demand instance and a T3 instance there, and then you can see the markings on the box over here. And it needs to be having certain installations, so to speak, right? So to get yourself started to communicate with our clusters. So we would be using Docker, then we would be obviously our main CICD software, which is a Jenkins, and then we will write plugins to communicate with our cluster. In a nutshell, so we are having a repository with a Java Spring, and then it's a service that needs to be pushed to our cluster there. So it's a Kubernetes environment, and yeah, so the images that gets created from Docker gets pushed onto the pods, right? So the pods, as you are aware, are the units of applications in a Kubernetes, right? So the basic advantage that you get in a Kubernetes is that it is rapidly scalable, and then it is highly intelligent, as an you can have the pod scale, and it also has intelligent built in, because the desired state of the running instances can be appropriately tuned. So with all these facilities, no doubt this container-based world is getting very popular. And prior to that, we had SOA, service-oriented architecture, and then the cloud paradigm with Kubernetes is the modern operating system. Okay, so to put it in a very important nutshell, right? So I don't know anything about how do I get started with a pipeline, and then I need to push my Spring application onto a pod, onto a cluster. Okay, that is my task there. And so I'm going to take you through what it requires to have this whole thing set up and then get going. Okay, and once when you have this, once when you have this a PowerPoint slide which contains all these instructions there, you can pick it up from my site here, my GitHub, github.com /CDK1 Jenkins AWS. So you can find the PPT over there, and then you can have all the step-by-step instructions. Next, moving on to the second slide. Okay, so I'm just giving you some brief hints and all that, why it is getting much more popular, becoming a tool of the choice, right? There's some of the good things about the Jenkins. First of all, it's one of the oldest CI/CD tools with a lot of number of plugins and then growing. Of course, we have the variation of Jenkins, which is the Jenkins X, but here we are focusing that Jenkins will still hold ground for our Kubernetes deployment, right? It is open source and then free, right? And you can easily deploy, you can generate a lot of related plugins, whether it is going to be a QA plugin or it's going to be deployment artifacts and so on. And it can be easily configured, and then one of the best tools in place for CI/CD, continuous integration and a continuous delivery. And I hope my audiences are very clear on continuous integration and continuous delivery there. So in a brief, how do I set up my system there? You know, my code repository, which is responsible for creating a system, I should be able to do continuous integration in the sense that I should be able to check out the code, build it, and then test it, and then create a deployment artifact. And continuous delivery would be in a container world, would we do continuously push these artifacts and then have the pods updated. And the intelligence which is built inside our pods, you know, based on the specification, it automatically helps you to make sure that pod is alive. In case it goes down, it automatically comes up. So two important paradigms which is very much important in a modern Kubernetes world. Then additional slide that I've indicated for why still with the Jenkins is that, you know, it is suitable for all kinds of platform with different operating systems, which is made available, and it also boasts a lot of rich plugins. So talking about plugins, I have just started off in a journey in which I'm going to put my Jenkins on an EC2 machine. So as I shown in the previous slide, here in this slide number 3 on the left-hand side, that is the Jenkins on the EC2 instance. Okay, and EC2 instance. So what do I need to get started with that? So I need to have a plugin installed, right? So to communicate with the cloud, I need to set up a communication with my Git repo. I need to set up with a Docker, right? I need to Dockerize the image and then push it to the public. So an image needs to be created. Okay, so with all these concepts in the mind and all that, we should be able to put the things together and then have it sequenced and then have it tried out. Okay, and it also gives you an ability to understand how much of billing it will require for you to get this learning out, right? Learning, and then you practice it, and then it becomes a part of your skill. And then what is from the cost perspective, right? So I can show you my billing, and then you must be quite comfortable with that. It doesn't take quite much. The EC2 which I've chosen is the T3 medium, so it costs you about $0.04 per hour, and that you have the ability to do start up and shut down. And with an EKS cluster, it's also nominal, except that the EKS cluster charging happens because you cannot stop your EKS cluster. Okay, but you have facilities such as Lens. They provide you with the Kubernetes cluster with the millisecond per minute start and stop. Okay, that's on the side there. And the additional points which is benefiting for Jenkins is obviously the open source, and all the heavy integration is already taken care. For example, we'll also look at quickly in the CloudBees plugin integration, which is of much value to us. And obviously, that with all such kind of features there, and which is being freely available, and then it is enterprise ready, and then and it is trusted by whole worldwide international software community, and then it is applicable into in financial based service delivery as well, where there are very stricter rules. For example, the vulnerability that was reasonably found, and then which caused quite a lot of things. So it has its own importance in a modern delivery world. Okay. Okay, so we just visited our AWS infra diagram, and then on the right-hand side on the page 3, we wanted to create one EKS cluster. Okay, because we want to hook up our Jenkins on a cloud world, and then we have chosen AWS. And the Jenkins is going to sit on the EC2 instance, and it is going to communicate with an EKS cluster. Okay, so there are close to probably 150 services or so in AWS, and one of the important services that is available, and then which I find that rapidly consumed by quite a number of customers is EKS, Elastic Kubernetes service from Amazon. And as you will see through a bunch of slides, few are one in nature. It's wizard driven, and then it will help you to create a fully managed Kubernetes cluster from Amazon. Okay, so there are two parts to it when you want to set up your EKS cluster. One is the cluster itself, and then you attach a node group to it, right? So the cluster is responsible, as with the control plane, the whole functionality such as the API server, scheduler, and so on and so forth, which you are all aware of. In the Kubernetes world, on the right-hand side, you have the node group, which essentially contain a bunch of EC2 instances that you specify in the wizard that will be controlled by the cluster. So as with any other wizard and all that, so there will be going to be two parts to it. So one is the cluster setup itself, which will have some few dialog screens, and then which you need to pay attention to keep your EKS cluster up and running. And the wizard is very intelligent, and you're guaranteed to have a fully running cluster with no hiccups, and because you will have automatic notification whether the cluster is up or not. The first dialog that we are presented with is the step one there. So I go there, and then I go to the Amazon EKS service, and then I hit the create a new cluster there, and then we are presented with the first screen. So I give a name to it, and then I choose the Kubernetes version, and then I choose the cluster service role. So the roles you would be aware there, each and every service and all that needs to have a role attached to it to make it work. So you can look up on the Amazon Info Center to get the details on the service role and how to create them. So it's basically a bunch of steps which will lead you to creating the role. And then once it gets attached, you can press the refresh icon and then have that role selected. Okay, next. This is another important step that you have to do in the cluster configuration, and then the dialog presents with the networking, right? So in the networking, it's already obvious in a cloud world, you need to configure a VPC and a subnets and a security groups, which you are all very much aware there, right? So we are setting up our cluster in a private cloud world, right? And also you can toggle how you're going to present this endpoints, whether it is going to be public or private itself, right? So VPC is our, which is a secure place and all that we would want to have a cluster created there. So we can choose our VPC, which you already have configured, and you would appropriately choose the subnet point to which you created before, and then attach it to the particular VPC, right? And then you also have a security group created, which in a nutshell, which tell you what are the policies that are going to be allowed in terms of protocols such as TCP/IP, SSL, and so on and so forth, which will help you to communicate and then create the secured access to our worker nodes and then the control nodes, right? And this addressing you can choose now. Now AWS is enabled IP version 6, which will help you to have a larger addressing for all our dynamic objects, cloud objects. Right. Now the next is and you need to configure the endpoint access itself, as I mentioned before. So we need to tell that it needs to be a public or public and private or a private one. So the differences are very clear here. In the case of a public, the worker node traffic will leave your VPC to connect to the endpoint. Whereas in a public and a private, the worker node traffic to the endpoint will stay within the VPC, and private will be similar to that of public and a private. Now, you need to add some extra things in order to the dialog, which is presented to configure a cluster, which is your networking add-ons. So we need to also choose the version level for your Amazon VPC CNI, core DNS, and then kubeproxy, right? So as you can understand before, right, you from a Kubernetes world, okay, so VPC CNI will help you to enable the pod networking within the cluster, and then the core DNS will help you to set up your service discovery, and then kubeproxy will set up your service networking with your cluster, okay? And the logging screen is presented here in the dialog, and which you can help you to turn on, and then you can get all the details there. So to get all the details from an API server logging module, or the authenticator, controller manager, and scheduler, we'll get all such details, and we have them enabled by means of toggling the radio button. So once you go through all this dialogue successfully and carefully, then already prepared things with your system administrator or your AWS administrator or a DevOps administrator, senior administrator. So you can have our cluster successfully created here. And as you can see here, we can see the cluster being active here with the name of the cluster, right? And it also gives you a whole lot of detail which you can look through and then see. And it has been configured according to your requirements, right? So as I mentioned earlier there are two parts to our configuration there, right? So there are two parts to it. So one is your cluster configuration dialog wizard, and then your nodes, right? So the cluster is the main heartbeat, which is your having API server. And it controls basically a bunch of nodes. A node can be understood as an EC2 instances, which it controls, right? So the master gives the work for the worker to do, and the workers on basis of a command from the master server, it gets executed and then gives back the result to go back to the controller. So as with the cluster also here, we need to create a node IAM role, which is a very important one. And this role will facilitate you to be used by the node in working in relation with the cluster. Right? You can click on the info. You can click on the IAM console help, which is written there, which will help you to go through the steps of creating the role. And once it gets created, you can press the refresh button and have it selected over there. Right? Now we have created the role, and then we have indicated that we are going to create a node group, right? And then we are presented a dialog that comes the actual instance to be selected there. So I go and choose Amazon Linux 2, okay? So we don't have any other options there. In EKS and all, like we have to choose Amazon Linux variations there. So I have chosen an Amazon Linux 2 variant here, and I've chosen our on-demand capacity, right? And then the type of instances. So for me and all that, I need to work as a practitioner to get myself going with Kubernetes world. And then on demand, I would like to have the Kubernetes set up and then I work with my cluster and do the things. Maybe I'm preparing for my CKA, I'm preparing for more advanced concepts, right? So I chosen a T3 medium, which is around $0.04 per hour, right? And you can, right. So the one thing with EKS is that, you don't have the ability to shut down your cluster. Okay, the only way to do is to delete the cluster. So yeah, so if you want to stop your billing in that, so you need to you could go with deleting your node first and then creating the cluster, or just simply delete the cluster, which will delete your entire cluster. Okay, so I have chosen the instance type. Okay, so this you also need to keep in mind when you're doing a practice on your own, not on a company's account. So because you want to have your further hands-on on your own private cluster for your own professional work, I need to also give all this size. This size I can indicate in GIB or GIBs or GBs. Right? And now after this configuration, you are presented with a wizard which will help you to indicate what is the scaling that you require there. So this is a Kubernetes, first-class Kubernetes from AWS EKS. So as you are aware that the pods can be easily scaled there. So that means a node group and all that, it has got a configuration feature which can be configured to scale up. Okay, so you basically indicate over here what is the minimum size and then maximum size and the desired size. So in my case, I have set it as minimum, and then the maximum is 2, so the desired as 2 there. So that means I'll have 2 worker nodes which will be controlled there, and then we'll also quickly look into our look into my account and see where those nodes are running or EC2 instances are running. Right? And moving on, you will have also a kind of an important one. And then this particular configuration lets me know how much should be the setting the percentage or maximum number of unavailable nodes and all that. So in the previous screen, in the previous screen that we have indicated that we are going to have number of nodes to be 2. So whereas in the screen here, I'm telling that maximum I'm tolerating 1 node to go down. Okay. In case of during the node group version update. Okay. So that's how it is. So that's how this the beautiful configurations are automatically inbuilt into it, taking a lot of combinations that need to be taken care. Okay, as with cluster, I need to also indicate my subnets, and then I need to tell whether I need to have access to the nodes or whether I need to get some details from the nodes, and then allow SSH remove, and then I need to secure with my security group. So I use the subnets which I've created before and then attach it over here. And I also tell that, I would allow for an access to the nodes, and then I can choose my SSH access, and I choose a security group which I created before. And that will will set you up with an EKS cluster here, right? So I'm just moving to my Amazon. Can you see my screen now? Can you see my screen now?
Yes, thanks. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm in my account. Okay, I'm in account there. Okay, so I'm not logged in as a root account. As a best practice there,
actually, we are seeing the PPT. Actually, if I talk about myself, so others are seeing the presentation or the AWS account.
Okay, let me share it. Thank you, Mehul. Can you see now, Mehul?
Yes, it's visible now.
Okay, so I'm on my AWS. I've logged in there. Okay, I didn't show you my logging there, but what I want to emphasize you is that I'm not logged in as a root account. So one thing you need to keep in mind is that you need to you need to use the account which has the ability to create a cluster there. So I've logged in as an administrator who has got privileges to create clusters and so on and so forth. Okay, so that you need to keep in mind, because when you run the configurations on an EC2 instance, so you need to provide appropriate privileges by this particular user. Otherwise, you will not be able to communicate from this cloud instance back to AWS. So that you need to keep in mind here. Okay, so I have in my recently visited tab there, that shows what are things that I have looked up and things not. So as you can also see, it's pretty efficient to work with your learnings and then further practices, right? So I'm going to my Elastic Kubernetes service. Okay, so this is what we mentioned that which I've created here. I've created, and then you can see a whole lot of details on this particular cluster here. And this is the node group details here that has been created. So the wizard lets you know whether this whether the services are active there. So I recall doing a kind of a gotcha or a mistake though. So I didn't give the appropriate node role, and then I created the node group, and I was not able to attach this node group onto the cluster there. So it's very pertinent that you make sure that your node group is active after get created. And based on the experience that the cluster and the node groups gets created in about 40 minutes or so. So you can have your cluster up and running. Okay, so the node groups are basically EC2 instances here. And then if I go to my EC2, you can see the node groups. So these are the two ones that have been created here, and then we are running. And it has this instance ID because I've indicated in my configuration that I need to have T3 medium, right? I have T3 medium, right? Good. And this is the Jenkins instance which I'm going to use here. So because based on my chart, I'm going to share now. I'm going to share the PPT. So I'm going to have my Jenkins on this EC2 instance, right? So so this is going to have my Jenkins over here. So that is that I need to create, which I have not yet started it, and that I'm going to show by means of my my slide here. I'm going to get created. Okay, so I just simply have mentioned that you can use the EC2 dashboard to create a new instance, right? So you can simply you can go to AWS and you can hit okay, you can hit the launch instance from here. So I'm presented with various Amazon machine images that are available to me. So that's one of the beauty of in a modern cloud-based operating system or a cloud-based system that we are creating here. So everything is on demand. So all these luxurious things are available instantaneously for per minute billing, right? So for our purpose, or for this particular practitioner purpose, I have chosen Ubuntu server there. So I will not complete the wizard though, but I can take you through so that you can have an understanding of how to go over this particular wizard. So I go and choose my Ubuntu 20.4, and then it gives me the various options that are available with. And then since I'm working with the Kubernetes cluster, okay, one of the things that I need is that I needed 2 vCPUs and then a 4 gig of memory. I choose them. And I hit the configuration details, and then I allow the wizard to be as such. Okay, and then I go to next part, which is adding the storage. And one thing is that it's a good thing that I am ensuring that delete on termination, so the volume gets deleted, so there is no additional charges and all that and stuff like that. So there is no remnant data that is going to sit after you delete the instance. So I'm happy with the kind of size that I need there for my purpose to work with. Okay, and this is good enough. And then add a tags to it and all that. If you want, you can add, say, something like Unix-name what Ubuntu 20.4. Okay. And then configure a security group. So right, I need to create a certain policies and all that, and then this wizard is very, very intuitive. So to tell what type of protocol that needs to be allowed and type and all that. So when I want to log into the machine, I have to use a secure SSH way, okay, and then it has to communicate on port 2022, and then it can you're allowing any public IP access to this particular SSH instance, right? So this is good enough for me to good enough to proceed. So I hit review and launch, and immediately I get an kind of an alert saying that it is open to the world. Okay, and it's okay that I'm doing a practitioner level things, which so I want to allow this access, and it also tells me that it is not eligible for free tier usage, which I'm okay with. Okay, so and if I hit launch, and then a new instance can be created, and which I'm not going to do because I already have an instance up and running. So I simply cancel them. So the EC2 instance, which I've named it as Jenkins, okay, it's Ubuntu on 20.4 level, and that is that I'm going to configure with Docker and Jenkins, right, which I'm going to show you in the forthcoming slides. Okay, so this slide shows that we have effectively created an instance there, and then I also need to have a lookup on the details there. So I click on the checkbox, and then I get all the details on the instance there. So what is of interest to me to work with it is that the public IP4 address, right? So we have a public IP4 DNS address, and it is listed over here, and then the DNS as well as the addressing. So if I want to configure, if I have my Jenkins install and then want to configure the Jenkins, so I need to know my public IP address. Right? That's there. And the slides and all, I'm just indicating how I'm going to access our EC2 instance there. So in my machine, I have the latest Dell machine, and it has got a quite good RAM, 32 GB and 500 GB hard disk. And then I also have my Git bash installed here. So I use this as a tool to communicate to my EC2 instance, which I created. I also had noted down from a previous wizard what is the IP address with which I need to communicate there, right? So I have that. I have my SSH. I have my Git bash installed, and with which I can do an SSH, right? So I need a command to log into the machine there. So Amazon gives you very beautiful illustration on the info center, how do you communicate there. So the command is I give SSH, and SSH is available from my Git bash, from Git bash, and then I pass in the flag -i, and then I pass in the PEM. So when you create an instance, we would have indicated through the wizard what is the PEM that will be used for communicating with my instance there. So it's a secretive secretive thing here, as you can see here. I have the PEM downloaded over here, right? It's on my downloads, so with which I can access there. Okay, so I indicate which is my PEM. Okay, and then I need to give user at the rate of the public IP DNS name, right? And Ubuntu is the already prefixed user for this particular Ubuntu images. So because if you look into the wizard screen when you created here, it already indicated this is the particular user with which you can log in, and then you can do various configuration over it. So it's a prefixed name, okay, that you can find it from the wizard, and then you can log in. Right? Next, okay, so far so good. So I have my EC2 instance made available from AWS by clicking few clicks. I'm having it ready there. And then what do I need to do? Okay, I have my EC2 instance, it's threadbare now. I just logged in, it's nothing over there. Okay, I'm not showing you how to log in there. I can do that. So all the commands are get stored in the it gets saved. So I'm running the same one there. Okay, so only thing that you need to make sure is that these DNS names keep changing, because these are all temporary ones. It keeps changing. So these are not these are spot ones, right? So you need to make sure what is the current one by refreshing, by going to the wizard, and then having by looking at the screen, the instance screen, which I showed it before, and then getting the IP address there. So it could be possible that the IP DNS name would have changed, so that you have to look up for the new one and then use them. I have the EC2 instance, which I also successfully logged in. And then one thing to mention you on the PEM is that it is your cloud-based user ID and password. So it's, as AWS also recommends you to keep it in a safe place. So I also store them in a safe place. Unlike in an enterprise world, that could be in a different place there. So I have the secret access and all that are stored over here. So as an administrator access keys, and the PEMs are stored separately. Okay, so if you lose them and all, you cannot access to your EC2 instance. That is something that you need to keep in mind. I need to now go and then have installed Docker on my EC2 instance, right? Because I have a Git repo. I have my Git repo given to me, and that is my starting point. So I don't bother about what is inside my Git and all that. And then I have my fellow colleagues who are also the build colleagues who have prepared me the Gradle build with there, and they have provided me with my with the details. So I have cloned it and then made it available here. So I also need to Dockerize them, because the Docker images needs to be pushed to our Kubernetes parts. Okay, so those are the units of application in Kubernetes world. So obviously, you need to go and install Docker there. So I've also indicated the link with which you can follow and then install Docker. since my EC2 instance is Ubuntu, okay, I chose this particular link, which will give you details over there. So it's basically simple steps and all that. And we don't have root privileges, so you need to append sudo with all the commands here. The first thing that you do is, update the apt package index, and then you also sufficiently configure them to help to use over HTTPS. So these two commands will help you to do that. And to set up your repository with a particular Docker official GPG key, then you add the Docker official GPG key here in this following command over here, which is shown. And then to tell where you need to pick up from a repository, from a stable repository to install the Docker. So I run this following command there. And mind you, all these things are available from here, information center here. So it's all taken and put down religiously, verbatim, so that you don't make any mistakes over there. Otherwise, you will not be able to run through the whole command there. And finally, you simply update the apt package index and then install the Docker as well as the container D as well. So using this particular command. So you pass them in a space here and then ask it to install Docker C and then Docker CLI and then the container D as well. Okay. So there is also a tip that is indicated over here. How do I fix my permission denied while trying to Docker daemons socket? So this is available here. So as I mentioned to you before, the PowerPoint slides are available in this particular GitHub, which you can clone and then use them. Right. Okay, so I have my Docker successfully installed. What do I next need to do? I need to install Jenkins. So hold on, I can't do my Jenkins because I need to have my Java also on the machine. It's a threadbare instance, cloud instance. So I need to have my JDK installed. So by running few commands here, so as before, you need to update your package manager and then check if in case Java is installed, and then use this following command to have OpenJDK 11 installed, right? So, and Java minus version will help you to indicate whether Java has been successfully installed on that particular machine. Okay, now I have my Java installed, then what do I do next? I need to install Jenkins. How do I do that? Okay, I need to update the package manager with the appropriate Jenkins repository, right? And then set up my stable repository and then update the apt package. Then I run a sudo apt-get install Jenkins. So this will install the Jenkins on the EC2 stated machine, and you should be able to see Jenkins successfully installed. And then if you want to see whether Jenkins is running, we can run this particular command and then we can see if the Jenkins is running. Okay, so good thing is that it is up and running, and then I can exit out of this command by pressing Control C. So I can also verify if my Jenkins is running, and okay, I can use a new browser as well. I can see that okay, I have stored it in my history. So only thing that but you need to make sure that the public IP address remains the same. So we can go to the instances and still verify if your public IP address is still the same. And then it is showing me as 18.217.23.171. Yeah, with one, and then it is running on 8080. Okay. Okay, the next step after my Jenkins is installed is make sure that I'm going to configure my Jenkins. So I know the public IP address, and then I know a public knowledge that it runs on 8080 port. I simply bring up the public IP colon 8080, and then I press enter. I should be able to present it with this configuration screen. So the very first challenge will be this wizard will ask you to unlock your Jenkins, right? It also gives you the secret for which you have entered, and then you need to go to this appropriate path and then get the secret and paste it into the PowerPoint. Paste it into the screen to unlock Jenkins. So if you do an sudo vi var lib Jenkins secret initial password, you take the secret password and then paste it on administrative password, and then you'll be able to unlock Jenkins. Okay. So one of the tips that you need to take care is that you need to work with your security group. So recall that previously you created an EC2 instance, and then you were given default details in the security group. So you initially told the wizard that I would want to allow an SSH access on port 22, right, to the EC2 instance. Now, one more thing needs to be added there, because now Jenkins need to be accessed over here as an inbound to the EC2 instance. I need to provide them in my wizard. So I edit my wizard, and then I'm going to add port 8080 onto that. Okay, so that will help you to allow Jenkins access there. And once you so now you are on this particular screen there, that you're given the IP address and then colon 8080, and then you're given the secret. Now you will present you with customized Jenkins wizard, right? I've chosen all the install suggested plugins, and then after a few minutes, it will help you to install all the plugins. And after that, you will be presented with creating the first admin user. So I've chosen who is going to be the administrator for this particular instance, given all the details and email addresses, and then I complete it. And then I'm successfully presented with an option to change the Jenkins URL also. Suppose I want to give it as Jenkins1/Jenkins2 or something like that. You can ability to append to it, or you can leave it as such, and then you can start working with your Jenkins URL. So in my case, I have left it as the IP address, which I have picked it up, and then the port number as the default one. So I have not changed anything to it. This login, this particular path parameter gets appended dynamically. So if I press enter there, so it brings up with my Jenkins, right? Okay, now I have set up my Jenkins. I have set up my administrator there. Then what all things I need to configure them? Obviously, I told before that you need to set up your plugins. Okay, so the default ones are already installed, but I need to set up certain things. What could be them? I need to install my CloudBees cloud plugin. That is a very important one, which will also look up in a slide. And then it is a Java-based application, so I need to set up my Gradle here. So we are going to do a build with our Gradle. Okay, so it's a Java-based build system there. So how do I get in there? I go to the manage and then global tool configuration and then choose them. So I log in here again. I navigate to manage Jenkins. I go to global tool configurations. Okay. I navigate up to Gradle, and then I'm interested in Gradle some point from. And I choose this option, checkbox, install automatically, and then apply it. So I don't I don't verify, see if the Gradle is installed, because when I do a build, I'll make sure that Gradle is working. Okay, that's one part of it, right? And then after that, okay, now it also makes sense for me to allow this Jenkins user to have root privileges. Reason is that Jenkins would want to communicate to the cluster. So we would want to have the root privileges so that it can communicate with the cluster there. So I've also given you a small instructions and then where you can edit the sudo-ers file and then allow Jenkins. And because Jenkins is installed, so the user called a Jenkins is created and then we would wish to assign a sudo. So we edit the etc sudo-ers and then add this following at the end of it and then save them, right? So this will have the ability to provide super user role to this Jenkins user to interact with the cluster, right? So on and so forth. So it's good now. Okay. So I have installed the Jenkins on my EC2 instance, and I have also installed Docker on that, and then I'm done with my configuration of my Jenkins. Right? I didn't tell you about installing of the additional plugin that is required, but we'll see in the forthcoming steps, and so that we will park it at the moment. Okay. Then what do I need to do, right? And this is my EC2 instance, which I am going to communicate with my cluster, with my EKS cluster. So what I need to do? So one of the things that I need to do is I need to set up my AWS CLI, right? So as with before, we use the sudo apt and then we install our AWS CLI. And if you look up into the Google and then find the information on how to install the AWS CLI, you will have a whole lot of details how you can do them. So it's a very simple single line command installation, and then it will help you to set up your AWS CLI. And if you run your AWS -FN version, and then you make sure that things are properly set up, so that means our CLI is properly set up. So the AWS CLI is very, very powerful, and that is a tool with which you're going to communicate with your instance. So I'm making sure that it is set up, and then I give AWS -FN version, and then it gives me back this. And then it tells me that, okay, CLI is on 1.8.69 version, and I'm happy that CLI is up and running. So that's good. That's really good. I move on. And then after my AWS CLI is set up, I want to configure them, right? So I need to give details to the CLI and tell which account I'm going to work with and things like that. So now the EC2 instance will be start communicating with my cluster and so on and so forth, or with my details there. So how you're going to do is you're going to use AWS configure. Okay, that's a very simple command. Okay, what do I need to get in details out of it? As you can see here, since I've already given the details over here, right? It is showing me with the masked ones. So where all I get my details there, as I mentioned before, I have it downloaded there, and then it is available as an administrative access key here. Okay, administrative access key there. Okay, which I'm not going to expose it out. Okay, for obvious reason there. So. And then I give my AWS secret key, okay, and then the default region name, okay, yeah, default region name. So default region name is pretty simple. Right. So I mentioned that we are not going to use the root. Okay, we are going to use an administrator ID which has been created, and I also had chosen appropriate region where I want to create a cluster. So in my first attempt, I created a North Virginia. Unfortunately, it did not go through because the region is out with it's unable to accommodate additional cluster. So I chose US East 2, and then I set it up, and that's my region there. So I need to give the default region there. I'm not entering anything, and the default output I give it as JSON there, and then enter them. Right. Okay. So I entered all those details, and then now by configuring them, all the details are available over there. Okay. So another part of the puzzle is solved now. And what other installations I need to do? Obviously, there is a very important utility apart from AWS CLI, which you need to communicate with the cluster. That is your kubectl. So it's a straightforward piece of install there, and it is publicly available here. You simply it's an installable binary, right? It's a bin, right? So you use the curl command, and then if you look up for kubectl install, all these things are taken from there. So you use the curl lo, and then give the appropriate command to where to look for and do this, and then you can have this binary downloaded into your local instance, right? And you use shimod, and then give appropriate privileges to the downloaded extracted kubectl. And what we do is, simply use the sudo and then move the extracted .kubectl to user local bin to kubectl. So it will have it all the extracted one overwritten to this particular directory. And how do I verify it? I simply I verify the kubectl installation saying this kubectl -n version, and then it will give you kind of a details like this, and then I'm sure that kubectl is working. Okay. I also initially before I mentioned that you need to do some additional steps here, right? Apart from installing the default plugins and then configuring our Gradle for our build system, right? I need to do them. I need to set up my Docker credentials, right? So when you want to work with Docker, so one thing that you do is that you create your Docker credentials. So, right. So, okay, so what it has done is it's automatically it has obtained it from the session, and then it has logged in here, and then it has automatically logged into the Docker hub. Okay, so I need to set these details into my Jenkins credentials. So how do I do it, right? So I go to manage Jenkins and then manage credentials, and then stored scope to Jenkins, and then add the credentials here. So we can go here and then have a look at it. I go to manage Jenkins, and then I go to manage credentials here, and choose this one, store scope to Jenkins, right? Global credentials. Okay, as you can see here, I've configured things that are pertaining to work with Docker, and then my Git, and then my cloud instance. So I hit the add credentials here, right? I choose them as I use a secret text, right? So once I choose the secret text, the wizard gets automatically changed here, and then it is asking me to enter okay, I think you had not seen it before. Let me log on to this, log out, and then show once again. Admin. Go to manage Jenkins, manage credentials, stored scope to Jenkins, you click on that, and then click to global credentials, and then add credentials here. And I do, from the drop down, I choose type, which is secret text. Okay. And then I indicate the scope as global, and then I have to give the secret and then the ID. Okay, so I did those steps there. I chosen a kind of secret text, and then I give the secret to it. So as soon as I enter secret, so it will get masked here, and then I give an ID to it. So I given this as docker_hub_password, and give a description to it. And then we will also make note of this particular ID. This is very, very important. we are going to refer to our in our pipeline code as well. This is very important. And then I need to allow my Jenkins to access my repository. So I also go through the same way. I go to manage Jenkins, manage credentials, stored scope of Jenkins, and then add a credentials. But this time I'm going to add with username and password, such as like this. I went through the same wizard flow, and okay, I give it as username and password. So I have to give the username and a password here, and an ID to it, and then a description here, which will help me to communicate with my credentials to access my Git repository. So I give my details. For example, here, one of the article that I referred here, the author is Rahul. Okay, so I've taken a screenshot from here and shown here. I give my credentials here, okay, and for accessing, and also give an ID to it. So I've given the ID as git_hub_credentials. And this is also important here because I'm going to refer it into my pipeline code as well. So the pipeline is very, very powerful, as you can see here. Well, when you set up your secret credentials, and then you can simply refer them back in your pipeline code, and which you're going to look at it shortly. So the another thing that I want to do now is to install my AWS credentials plugin. Okay, you can ask me a question why this is needed here, because this is very much needed here with which you're going to communicate to AWS, and this is a very powerful plugin, and it will help you to connect with your cloud instance by giving your access ID and then secret token. Right? So I go to the plugin manager and then click on available, and then I search for AWS credential. Okay. And then I'll be presented with this particular plugin called as CloudBees AWS Credentials. Okay, I am going to use the check mark and then indicate that I'm going to install that plugin. Okay, and then I'm going to choose that download now and install after restart. I'll press that particular button. So what happens is that it will have all the plugins getting installed, and then it will get then you will give the ability to restart your instance, and then you have to log in again and then make sure that the plugin has been installed there. Right. So I have my credentials, AWS credential plugin successfully installed. Then what do I do next? I need to, as before, I need to set up my credentials. So as before, I navigate to my credential screen and I indicate my AWS details there. So I go to add credentials, and then from the drop down, I choose AWS credentials there. So as before, it's very intelligent enough. As you can see, it is giving me access key ID and then a secret key access. So I'll give an ID to it and then the description. Okay, and then I'll just press the OK button. Okay, I'm not doing it here because it's secret though. So we can have a look at it, one that has been created there. So this is the one that I created for myself here, right? So as you can see, right? So this is very, very powerful here. And immediately when I set it up, it automatically tells that it is connecting to the 6 available zones. So this means that your Jenkins instance is successfully communicating in cloud. And this has been really cool there because you're not, the plugin has automatically indicated that it's connecting to 6 available zones. So that's a very good sign there. Okay. Okay. Now my Jenkins is all set and up and running. Okay. And how do I go from here? Okay. So one of the interesting things that I found, which is of use before, during the exploration time, is to make use of the CloudBees tutorial. And there is a good tutorial by Darian Poe. Okay, and I also indicated in the reference section where you can find them. So this is it's a publicly available repo, and so the repo itself is named. The README shows us how to integrate Jenkins with AWS. So it gives you basics and all that, and how do you get started here, right? So we are using a declarative pipeline here. Right? So we have two different pipelines in this world, declarative and scripted, and we are going for a pipeline. And this is a typical syntax of a pipeline there. It starts with a pipeline with braces and end braces, and then you indicate on which agent you would run. And the boilerplating is all indicated here. It's starting with stages and stages and stages within that stage, and within that step to be executed there. So a pipeline is nothing but it's a codified version of running your task, right? It could be Git checkout, it could be creating a Docker image and pushing it to the Docker hub, or deploying it to Kubernetes. So the basic boilerplate is indicated over here. So in this particular example, which I've looked up and all that, you're just running a simple SH, okay? And you can look it up, and then how the Groovy syntax is created there. So 3 single quotes, and then run your command. In first case and all that I want to try is that the version that you are running. So you're making sure that I'm able to communicate with AWS CLI, right? And then I further on make some improvisation to it, and then make sure that I'm able to communicate with my cloud. So after that, I update my pipeline code and then add an additional command, okay, AWS EC2 describe instance. And this is supposed to fail there because you have not indicated additional Groovy scripting details, that is the credential that needs to be passed in, right? So one of the things that you need to set up in your thing is that you have to indicate what is the region that you're going to work with. So as I indicated to you earlier there, you have to indicate the region with which you are working, and that is available as an environment parameters, AWS default region. Okay, that is where you set in there. Okay, that is also not sufficient there, right? So the reason being that it is now the command is not wrapped up with the appropriate credentials. So we make use of this with credentials there. So you can have a look up at this particular repo, and then you can have them kind of taking the boilerplate code, and you can have it pasted in your test pipeline there. So the syntax, you can obviously use them, except that you need to pass the credentials ID, which you have created before. So if I go and then look into my PowerPoint screen, which I've created before, so I would have set up my credentials appropriately. Okay. I will set up my credentials appropriately. And where is that credentials? That's a Docker, and then this is the Git. And yes. Okay. So this is the configure AWS CloudBees plugin gets installed. You need to give a name to it, and then you will refer them in your pipeline code. That is what I'm doing. I change them, and then I should be able to run it. So if I go to my Jenkins, I have my test pipeline set up over here. I do a configure. I see all the details over here, right? So I also indicated what is the default region with which I'm working, and then I took all my boilerplate code from the reference repository there, and then I'm ensuring that it is working. So I go there and I go to the test pipeline, and then hit build now. Okay, so it is able to successfully communicate with my cloud instances, and then it shows me what are the details of my instances that are available there. And it should show me 3 instances that are available there. So the one instance that I created, and then 2 node workers that are created for the EKS. So it gave me all those details and then that are made available. Okay, now what I do is I go back to my PowerPoint, and I successfully communicated by using the with the pipeline example given here, but Darian Pope's pipeline, and then I was able to use them and then communicate with my AWS. Right? This is what indicated over here. And one thing is that you need to look at it is that you need to indicate the agent. Okay, so if you I hope you know how to configure your agent, right? Yeah, this is where it is managed nodes and clouds. Okay, yeah. So this is where I do. I simply have gone to manage nodes and cloud, and then I clicked on my built-in node, and then I given a label to it. So by giving a label to it, I should be able to communicate with my pipeline here. So that is what is indicated here. This is very important. I'm referring with the same thing, otherwise it will not be able to communicate. So the concept of agent is that it's in a distributed world. So you have a master and then you have workers. So the agents are similar to that of a worker there. So you want to indicate which is the worker node where you want to execute this job. Okay, so I've indicated them as Linux, and then I use the same in my pipeline to run it. Right. Now, so far so good. And then how do I go about and then creating my deployment pipeline? So in a brief, we looked at that we are going to create a declarative pipeline, right? So a declarative pipeline will have this pipeline along with agent, environment, and stages, and steps. So steps and all that indicate that what I need to do with it. It could be running as simple as a shell script, so on and so forth, right? You can do them. Okay. So basically, it's very, very simple there. It's very simple. The first thing on all that I want to do is I want to check out a GitHub repository, right? So it's very, very simple here. And then it's a Groovy syntax that is available here. You can, it's also made available, right? And you can also use the help lookup in the pipeline wizard, and then you can create this script here. So you need to pass in the GitHub credentials, and then you need to pass the URL with which you need to check out. So only thing that this should be the same ID which you have configured before. So which I go to over here. Over here, so I have given it as I'm configuring my Jenkins with my GitHub repo. So I gave the ID as git_hive_credentials. I given those details to it, right? So I given those details to it. So this is very important. So it will help me to successfully check out my GitHub. Then what do I need to do? I need to do a Gradle build. Okay, I simply call a sh, and then I give and then indicate to build it using /gradlew. Okay, if you look at the repo, I have that repo already set up there. So it is already prepared for you. Okay, you can simply have a look at it, and then gradlew will be available here. If you go to my repo, okay, so gradlew is already there. Okay, so that is the instruction for helping to build your Java application, right? And then give the command as build. So it will help me to build it and then create a jar out of it. What next? So on and so forth. That's good. And then next is I want to do a Docker build. Okay. So it's once again this run as an sh command, right? So I use Docker build and then give a tag name to it. And then I further tag them. And then I indicate the repository image and then the : version to it. it will help me to build an image with a version there. Once this is created there, I should be able to then log into the Docker. Okay, so similarly as with AWS Cloud, you are using this Groovy syntax with credentials. Okay, you can also use this boilerplate code, and then it is available in the PPT. So except that you just pass in the Docker Hub password, and it is similar. It is obviously and all that the one that I've configured before on your on the slide on this particular side, Docker and GitHub credential with Jenkins. So we need to use the same ID, Docker hub underscore password. Okay, so I have built my Docker, and then my image is available, and then I should be able to push it to the Docker hub. So I use an sh, okay, use the Docker push command to push it into my repo. Since earlier I have done my login and all that, and then this will appropriately push. And notice the sudo here. For some reason, the sudoers, I don't know, it's not working in my case. So I had to append the command with the sudo there, so that I don't get any permission denied. That is the reason I appended. Next, I'm going to use I'm going to do the Kubernetes deployment here. As before and all that, you can use this with credential boilerplate code, and then you can wrap around for deploying your stuff, right? So in my repository, I have already created. In my repository, I have already created. I have created. I have created a deployment, right? So it's a very standard deployment, which will tell you what is the image that needs to be pushed, okay? And I want to indicate what type of service that needs to be created here, and then I want to indicate a load balancer type. And the port which is externally available is on 80 port, and internally it's running on 8080. Okay. So I have created my deployment YAML file, and then it is made available. So that needs to be sent as a command for deploying this application, right? So once again, I make use of AWS, and then I make use of AWS and then kubectl to push it. So this is the final step here, right? So, and wrapping this whole SH scripts that needs to be run with the weak credentials here. So I have, so the important things that we noted are the access key ID needs to be passed, and then the key variable also needs to be passed here. And then the credential ID is the same that with which you have configured before. So you did the configuration by going to CloudBees AWS Cloud plugin, and then given the ID Jenkins AWS creds. So this is the same thing that you're going to refer into your pipeline, right? So once you set it up, everything will be, you should be able to run these commands and then have the application deployed onto the Kubernetes cluster. Okay, so this just for a checking sake and all that, if my AWS is working. Okay, and then I am indicating to AWS which region I am working with, and then asking it to update the kube config, and then I'm giving the name of my cluster, okay, the name of the cluster with which I'm working. So once this is set up successfully, I use the kubectl command and then ask it to deploy this particular YAML file, which I've already created. So that is the end of the that is the end of my pipeline there. So we can have a look how it is there in the actual Jenkins. So if I go to AWS Kubernetes pipeline, I click on configure. Okay, so all these things are here there. So it has been represented in a declarative pipeline there. So re-looking again, so it's very important that which agent with which you are going to have your job run. That is what is indicated here. And then the steps that you need to do your stuff. So cloning stuff, and then you do the building stuff, and then you Docker build, and then log into a hub, and then push the Docker, the image that was created, and finally you push push the container image into a Kubernetes cluster by running the kubectl command. Okay, let's see it in action now. And I go to here, and then I click on build now. Okay, I see success being shown here. So I will also log into my EC2 instance and then get some details about it. Okay, so I've also created a okay, and I got all the details about the parts that are running over here and also indicating my services over here. So it gives me my image name and then types as a load balancer. So this is as expected because I configured the service type to the load balancer. Right, and then it also indicates on which port it is available, things like that. So far, so good. So now we have successfully, we have created a cluster, and then we have created an EC2 instance, and then we have installed Docker on that, and then we have installed AWS CLI and kubectl, and we are able to successfully create a pipeline and push our application into the cluster. Okay. I think we have come closer to the end of our presentation. Okay. I'm going to write some of the details over here. Okay, thank you all folks for attending, and I'm stopping my recording. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. Thanks for your time.
Thank
Really
you.
helpful.
Thank you.